Is your workplace future ready? This is the IssuesWatch podcast. Hi, I'm Don Meyer, Chief Growth Officer at the New Jersey Society of CPAs, and welcome to the IssuesWatch podcast. As the next generation of accountants and finance professionals enters the workforce, one priority stands at the forefront: building a workplace that not only attracts younger talent, but also keeps them engaged and inspired for the long haul. Creating a future-ready workplace requires more than just adjusting policies. It demands a deliberate cultural shift rooted in respect, development, and adaptability. And of course, it also requires adaptability and flexibility from those younger professionals. Joining me today to discuss the future-ready workplace is Alexandria Romero, Governmental and Leadership Training Facilitator at Galasso Learning Solutions. Welcome, Alex.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
It's great to have you. Thanks again. So let's jump right in. You wrote an article that will be coming out in the fall issue of New Jersey CPA magazine. It's titled "Building a Future-Ready Workplace, Attracting, Engaging, and Retaining Younger Talent." And in the article, you advise accounting and finance leaders to understand what younger talent value. Please explain that idea.
Yes, so the younger talent, a lot of them, they want more. They want to not only have their professional success, but they want the ability to be doing meaningful work. So really contributing to their teams, also to their communities, and really getting behind the mission of the organization and seeing that play out in their day-to-day work. They're really looking to have that well-rounded life. And I think we're even seeing that from older generations, talking about not wasting the time when you're younger in your career to be focusing so much on doing those long hours and really trying to go up that ladder quickly, but being well-rounded and still focusing on your health and your family and being passionate about your hobbies. And so I think that part of that also is that we really need to, as people that have been in the profession for a while, listen to this and appreciate it. I know that a lot of times as newer generations come in, everybody has stereotypes about, well, millennials, they all wanted awards. And you see this as we go through the different generations, but it's really about listening to them and learning from them and really seeing how they can be incorporated into your organization, but also hearing what they want to have done and really focusing on how you can better adapt and have them be within their job duties, but still having all of that outside of just their professional success as well.
Yeah, and I think that approach can also help with the pipeline challenges the profession's been having, because if students know that the profession they're thinking of values them not just as employees, but also as people, it makes that profession that much more attractive, right?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that we saw out of the NPAG report. And it was talking about having that compelling story. So unfortunately, accountants, auditors, people in the finance world, a lot of times we focus in on how difficult things are. It's difficult to get the degree. Then if you're going for your CPA, that's a difficult test. When you're in the profession, you're doing difficult work. One thing that I do is I teach a lot of things about governmental accounting. And what we saw most recently with the new uniform guidance is that they instilled plain language. So they even understood that why are we making things so complicated? We need to make it so that things are going to be understandable and not be kind of talking other people out of coming to the profession because we're talking about how horrible it is. Right. That we need to be telling that compelling story so that people are excited about it, that they see that there is that flexibility. There's so many different options and that you can be very lucrative in this career doing a number of different things. So yes, as you can tell, I'm very passionate about that we really need to be telling everybody as soon as I have a middle school son and I'm already kind of talking to him about, yeah, you see one side maybe, but there's all these other things. And this is a great profession to get involved with.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. And it's nice to see the narrative changing a little bit. A couple of years ago, there were a lot of articles, Wall Street Journal in particular. We did a lot of articles about, where have all the accountants gone? Accounting is dying, et cetera, et cetera. we're starting to see more articles focused on the positive side. There was an article, I forget whether it was Forbes or Fortune recently, that talked about students doing work for VITA, the IRS program for senior citizens,
Mhm.
low-income people, and how
Mhm.
excited those students
Mhm.
were saving senior citizens a couple $100 on their taxes. So I mean,
Yes.
it's happy. I'm happy to see that the narrative is changing, but we just have to keep it going. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about from the article was you highlighted the importance of creating a culture of belonging. We all want to feel like we belong someplace, right? So what are some of
Mhm.
the ways that employers can strengthen belonging in the workplace?
One of the things that I think you need to start off from the very get-go is having that welcoming environment, somewhere that everyone feels safe. And so when I was a director of finance for a local municipality, we had about 28 individuals in our finance department. And what I started when I came into that role, I said, now think about it. When you come to work, do you want to feel like you're going into an environment that you feel safe, that you feel respected, regardless of your background, of your beliefs, of how you work, all these different things that make us unique? We all want to go to work and feel as though we're going to be in a safe environment. And so that's what I really think is part of it, is making it top priority that it is a welcoming space for everybody. We want there to be people that are going to be empathetic as leaders and really invite feedback and really having that genuine care for their team. So, oftentimes I would talk a lot about what I was doing in my personal life just so that I could make people feel welcome and know that they could come to me with anything that they had concerns about. I think it's important that we also have awareness that we have people that are going to come from different cultures, different backgrounds. So we might all be in the same community, but we had differences as we were growing up, and understanding that different perspectives should be shared and encouraged, and really having, if you have that first and foremost welcoming environment, people are going to feel more apt to really engage and contribute. So I think that that's one of the biggest things, is that if we want people to feel belonged, they have to feel safe. And it's not just about stripping away things. So I see the other side, that people are like, well, then we can't really have potlucks, or we can't celebrate holidays. And it's like, that's not what this is focusing on. This is focusing on that no matter what holiday you want to celebrate, that's okay, and that's encouraged, and that we don't really make it so that somebody feels uncomfortable. You don't have to agree. You don't even have to be best friends with everybody. You just need to understand that you are in a professional space, and that every single person that is working there truly belongs and should feel as though they're safe and welcomed.
Right. So in order to create that welcoming environment, successful leaders have to be emotionally intelligent mentors and communicators. So what are some of the key elements of emotional intelligence that foster retention and engagement?
Sure. So I think one of the most important pieces is just being self aware yourself, understanding where you're going to have your own emotional triggers, so that as you're going into certain situations, you can kind of predict if it's going to be something that's going to be more upsetting to you, and think through that before you get into those conversations so that you're better prepared. I also think being transparent. So I talked about it in my last response. If you're more transparent and you talk about, what you're doing on the weekend, you talk about your family, it's going to make it so that people are going to feel more engaged, and that they can really share as well. You also need to be aware if there is a conversation or a meeting that's happening, if you see it shifting. You need to be aware of that with your emotional intelligence, to then shift that conversation and be able to adapt to what the new circumstances are. A lot of us are understand the different types of leadership, but really being able to plug and play those. And even sometimes in one instance, you might have to deploy different types of leaderships. You need to be able to understand and not have a judging demeanor, that people feel like they can be open with you. You need to provide that meaningful feedback. And when I say that, I'm not just talking about critiquing. A lot of times when we think about feedback, it's like, oh, well, I need to be able to take criticism and be constructive with that. I'm talking about good feedback as well. You need to
Mhm.
be able to do both of those. Celebrate those wins, even if they're small, just mentioning them in team meetings so that people see that you really do care about the team. Making sure that you're able to resolve those conflicts and doing so with integrity. I think that's all the pieces that kind of fit into being somebody that's going to be a leader that's really keen to their own emotional intelligence.
Right. Now, creating a future-ready workplace, it is a two-way street. You have employers, but you also have employees. So how is emotional intelligence also important for young professionals adapting to the workplace?
There's a number of items there that younger members that are coming into the workforce need to think about. We talk a lot about self-awareness with emotional intelligence, and that's one of the pieces that needs to be top of mind. That it's going to only help you as you are adapting to this new workplace culture, that you are self-aware, that you're able to read the room, that you are observing those unwritten rules. And one of the things that I think is important is maybe having somebody like a mentor that you can ask about those unwritten rules, but just being there in the moment and seeing what goes on. And that's really going to help you build rapport with your team members. You also need to think about your communication skills and that you, even in a younger, maybe a staff position, sure, you're going to be receiving a lot of feedback, hopefully good feedback, as well as some of that constructive feedback. But you also need to be aware and think about giving feedback as well, even if that's upward feedback. You need to think about navigating conflicts and being very diplomatic in that and asking those clarifying questions without having that fear that there's going to be judgment. I'm not going to get promoted because those that are above me are thinking that I don't understand. When you're new, you don't always understand, and that's okay. So, being confident and aware enough that you can ask those questions to gain the knowledge that you need to do. And then managing your stress and being able to really self-regulate in high pressure. And I'm not saying like bottle it all up, but be able to realize what is going to be something that's going to be very stressful to me and how can I really address that stress and not make it so that I do something that I later regret in the workplace.
Right. Yeah, I think communication skills, particularly the skill of asking questions, definitely critically important. So, what are some other skills or habits that will help young professionals connect with their coworkers while also setting them up on the best path to professional growth?
When I think through that area, it's really showing initiative, but kind of tempering that. You need to respect others' expertise. If they have been in the profession for a while, they have the experience, they have the knowledge, and you need to come forward with that learning attitude. You need to be confident, but also humble. A lot of individuals, as they come into this profession, they're already highly educated. Many of them, if they're going down the CPA path, they have started doing those tests, they have started studying. So these are very smart individuals. So you can be confident. And some of us have that, have an issue with that we kind of feel imposter syndrome. We might not be as confident. So you want to have that, but also making sure that you understand your role and that you're going forward with that learning attitude and really wanting to gain all the knowledge from those around you. You also need to make sure that you are being very consistent and following through. It's going to be so frustrating to team members if you say, yeah, sure, I got that, or it will be done by Friday, and you miss those deadlines, you don't follow through. That's going to make it difficult to build those professional relationships with everybody on your team. If you are going to be having a delay, be transparent about it. Give updates. Be open to saying, hey, I'm having a struggle in this area. I need some assistance. I'm not going to be able to do this. Is there anybody else that I can bring in to work with? Because I'm just not quite there with being able to get it done. You also need to think about really networking at work. Now, that sounds a little strange, but it is going to be beneficial if you are in one department, if you engage and talk to others, especially others that are at that same level as you, somebody that's just coming in, that's newer to the team, that's going to help so that you get to know people and then they start to get to know you as well.
Yeah, and a lot of these things are so simple, I mean, showing up on time, following through on your promises, things like that. Those are basics. That's nothing that you need a 4-year degree for. That's stuff you were probably taught by your parents in high school or middle school. So yeah, a lot of these things are fairly simple. I think that's the good news for any young professional.
Absolutely. And I think that that's just making sure that you're balancing it because you do want to come in, and a lot of times you want to make sure that you kind of stand out so that you're going to be the one that people are thinking about for extra projects and promotions. But just being there and using your skills and understanding that everybody around you has a lot that they can teach you as well.
Right. And I think that's where the sense of belonging and the welcoming environment comes in. Because if you know you have a leader or you're working with a leader that is going to showcase you and showcase your talent, you don't feel as much pressure to put it out there and maybe step on some toes along the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Absolutely.
So going back to your article, you mentioned several tactics that will build an employee experience that retains and energizes. Please tell our audience what those tactics are.
You need to be flexible. That's something that's important, especially to these younger generations. And that includes where they're able to work, when, and how. But the thing that you really need to make sure is that you have clear policies around that, so that you're talking about who's going to be eligible, which positions are eligible. Do we have set working hours? Is there more flexibility in there? So I think it's important that you're looking at this because there is that shift that people are wanting to have at least partial hybrid. Now, that's not everybody. You do have individuals that want to be in office, but having that flexibility where you can look at what's going to best work for your team members, but putting those guardrails on there, not so that people aren't abiding by the policies, but just so that they understand. That's the best thing, is just being very clear about it. Having your workload and really managing that over time. So maybe being able to smooth those peaks, that can be difficult when you have tax deadlines and things of that sort. But looking if there's ways you can distribute work throughout the year so that you don't have those high peaks and valleys. We don't see as many valleys as we used to, but you need to try and make it, especially for your younger team members, that they're learning consistently, but they're also having those hours that they are getting that knowledge and building those skills. You also need to have those very clear growth paths. If you are in a finance department in industry, looking at what's it going to take? What's that competency that we're looking for somebody that's going to be in an executive leadership role? What does it look like in a firm? How do we get to partner? And having that available for everybody, because you might see that initiative and you might see something in someone that you're like, yes, they look like they can be a leader here, but there might be somebody else that just needs that clarification on what they are expected to do, and then they might rise to that occasion. So not counting anybody out and having it so that you have that path that everybody can see. I mentioned a little bit earlier also about mentorship. Having mentorship is super helpful, and especially for younger people, if they are just coming out of college, that they have somebody that has been in the profession or either been at the organization for a while, so they can even ask those simple questions. How do I ask for time off? What's appropriate timing for our lunches? Simple things, but then they also can start helping them with other items. And that also creates a safe space that if they're seeing that there's an area that they need to improve, a mentor can talk about that with a mentee, and it's going to be likely better received than if maybe a manager comes and talks to that younger employee. So a lot of benefits to having a mentorship program as well.
Yeah, and what I find interesting about a lot of the tips and the tactics you're mentioning is I think creating that welcoming environment has become so important. But a lot of these tactics we're talking about, I mean, they would have been relevant 20 years ago or 25 years ago. So I think it's really more about just sort of updating this new generation of both leaders and employees about the types of things that are going to make for the best type of working environment.
Absolutely. And doing the follow through. A lot of times I think we talked about this stuff, but then we didn't actually do it. We were so focused on doing the client work, but making sure that you actually are doing these items so that we do see that succession plan. We are filling the pipeline because people are wanting to be in this profession. They are seeing the great benefits to it.
Right, exactly. Well, Alex, this has been great. We really appreciate it. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it as well.
Thanks for listening or watching. Visit the show notes for articles, resources, and events on company culture, employee management, and career development.